Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me for this video. This is something that I am doing as part of a blogging challenge that I had joined to help increase traffic, and apparently one of the things I should be doing is videos. As you guys know, I don't do very many of those, or any really, mainly because video is not really my thing, but it's something we're going to give a try. So I'm hoping that there will be more of these videos coming in the future. I just don't know how often necessarily because I do have a pretty busy schedule. But for today's video, I had asked you guys for suggestions on what you guys wanted to hear about, and I got a couple of suggestions. So for those of you whose suggestions weren't covered in today's video, don't worry, I am making a list and I will be covering those in later videos at some point. So today's video, we're going to be talking a little bit about Wattpad. As some of you may know, I do use that platform, and mainly for me, I use it as a sounding board for my stuff before I'm ready to publish it. But Alan Steedham had asked me if I could maybe talk today a little bit about some of the pros and cons and things that I've found good about Wattpad and things that I've found to be not so good. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to start off with the pros. I will say that I do like Wattpad as a community. So I use several other different platforms for writing as well, Inkit being one of them. I've used Prose and a couple of others as well. And what I've found with Wattpad is that it is the most community-oriented among those. It's the easiest for people to really get involved with other writers on. They have forums for you to actually chat about different things. You can leave comments on the books, and the system for doing that is a lot more intuitive than it is for some of the other platforms that I've used. So I found that I've had better reader engagement on Wattpad than I have on other sites, simply because it is easier for both the author and the reader to interact with each other on this platform. So that is like the number one big thing I would say about Wattpad that I really like. The second thing I think I really like about Wattpad is the ease that they offer to you for sharing the book. This is another thing that's not so great on other platforms. You do have to do a lot of work to get it out there on Wattpad, but they've got forums, like I said, ways for you to share it. You can get involved with critique groups on the site. You can get beta readers there. You can ask for people to edit it in exchange for other services that you provide for them. There's just a lot of different options for getting your work out there and for really testing how people feel about it, whether that's through readers, editors, even cover designers. Just a lot of different options, and you don't really see that on the other platforms, at least not the ones that I've used. My experience has been that they generally are a lot harder to work with in terms of that. It's a lot harder to find, say, a beta reader on Inkit than it is to go find a beta reader on one of the forums in Wattpad. They make it very accessible and easy for you to do that. I also like how they do their categorization. I would say that this is something that's kind of a pro and a con for me. When I first started Wattpad, you had the option to put it into more than one genre when you were categorizing, which was really nice because some books, especially my stuff, I found it doesn't always fit in with just one genre. Sometimes it's kind of a cross between the two, so when I put it in one, readers are like, well, this isn't really what I expected. Whereas if I could put it into more than one like I used to be able to, it was a lot easier for readers to know, oh, okay, this is kind of going to have a little bit of both flavors. So that's why I say it's kind of a pro and a con. I like how they do the categories to make it easy for you to market the book, to make it easy for readers to find your book, because that's something that isn't always done as well on some of the other platforms that I've used. Inkit is comparable, but it can be difficult to find well-written and unique stuff when you go look at the different tags, because again, their system is just not as clearly outlined as Wattpad's is. So yeah, the categories are something I would consider to be a plus about the books. As far as other things that I think are pros about Wattpad, they do seem to have a fairly strong critique network set up, and I feel like that's something that authors really need. Like, you need input from other authors. Whether you're self-editing or not, it's really important to hear from other authors and readers on what you're doing. And again, you can definitely find those people on other platforms. Wattpad just does it better. And because a lot more writers use Wattpad, you do have a lot more options to choose from. There's a lot more people you can find that read your genre, read maybe your subgenre, and are able to really help you out with that. Along that same line is the fact that Wattpad has dedicated threads in their forums for finding people who can help you with things like your cover design or your blurb. Those are two things that are really important to a book, because your back cover copy, what it says on the back of your, like a paperback's back cover copy, what that says about the book really does matter. The reader makes the decision whether or not to read your book and whether or not to buy your book based upon your cover and the blurb, or what's on the back of the book. So if you don't do a good job with those things, like, your book could be the best thing in the world, but no one's going to read it. So Wattpad does have a strong community of graphic designers and people who are really good at doing the back cover copy for your books. So you are able to find people on there who can help you out with that. And I do really like that, and have taken advantage of it before I had other people that I knew that I would work with specifically for those things. So I guess those would be the things I would say are the pros. Cons. So there are definitely cons about using Wattpad. One of those cons is that if you put the book out on the platform, it is free. They are adding ways for you to monetize your books now, but it's only for a few select people. So it's difficult to get into that system, whether it's through the Wattpad publishing imprint that they're starting up, or whether it's through their STARS program and some other things that they have available to monetize your books. They are trying to expand that program, so we'll see where it goes in the future, but for now, it's just hard to get into it. So for the most part, everything on the platform is going to be free. For a reader, that's awesome. If you're a writer, not as much. Like, it's great to get input and feedback, but you have to put it up knowing that even if you edit it and make it significantly different and then publish it, you're going to have a good chunk of readers who read it on that platform and decided they didn't want to buy it. Because why do they need to, really? They already read it. They've got the main story plot line. Yeah, you may have changed things, but they just don't care enough. Now, you may have some avid readers who read it and were like, oh, you put it out in a paperback or a Kindle, like, I want that because I just enjoyed the book so much and I want to read it over and over. And it's a little bit easier to draw readers like that in if you are smart about how you put things up on the platform. So if you put it up in its entirety and then once you publish it, you pull it down or leave just the first chapter or two up, it can still generate leads and sales, but that is a little bit of a con because you are taking the risk that there are readers who read it, had fun reading it, but they're not going to buy it because they already read it once. I would say that's the majority of readers on Wattpad, so I don't expect to make a bunch of sales from being on Wattpad. Another con on the platform is that they're inundated with so much bad writing in fan fiction. Honestly, I've clicked through so many different books where the writer just did not know how to write. And I understand that everyone has to start somewhere. There's nothing wrong with that. I am not saying that they shouldn't be out there writing or getting feedback, because predominantly Wattpad is a community of readers and writers, so it is a good place for you to start out and get that feedback on your writing in order to improve. But as somebody who is trying to establish themselves as an indie author, or who is established but is looking to expand their readership, it can be really, really hard for the good stuff to be discovered, because there's so much bad stuff on there that readers have to scroll forever to find your stuff. I write fantasy, as most of you know, and so one of the things that I've noticed about that particular genre is that there's you wouldn't think there is, but there is just a ton of fan fiction. And I'm not talking fan fiction for previously published fantasy books, although sometimes there is that. But I'm talking fan fiction where they're writing about a specific band, and it's like, some sort of lead singer from the band X, whoever the reader is. It's fantasy because they chose to set it in a fantasy world when they wrote the fan fiction, but it's really not fantasy. That can be really frustrating for those of us who are writing actual fantasy and trying to get our work out there, because when everything up at the top of the list is all fan fiction and you have to scroll through 10 pages of basically garbage or unrelated stuff in order to get to the good stuff, it's kind of frustrating. I'm sure there are other writers on the platform who have also experienced this, and in fact, I know there are, because some of the people in my critique group are on Wattpad as well. Most of them are. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is the fact that there's all these, 13-year-olds writing on here, and they don't really understand what the genre is. And so they just kind of write whatever feels good, and that's mostly fan fiction. And unfortunately, a lot of the readers on the platform, for some reason, seem to like that stuff. So there is definitely a very real trend in terms of what is read on Wattpad. Going along with that point, one of the things that I would say is a con about the platform is the fact that the romance genre is just out of control. You could have a really great fantasy book, but if somebody else has written a fantasy romance, especially one that has the bad boy, good girl trope or something along those lines, readers are probably going to read that first. Even if the quality of writing is horrible, they are going to read that first before they read your book. So it's not really fair that people in the fantasy genre are in competition with writers from the romance genre, because they're not the same. But unfortunately, like I said, people mix the categories, they mix the tags on the books, and so a lot of stuff ends up in genres and categories that it's only vaguely related to, and it really should be in a different main category. I think this may be part of the reason why Wattpad started restricting us to only one category on the book, because they didn't want people listing things as fantasy if it really ought to be romance. I haven't seen it necessarily helping a whole lot, but I'm sure it has helped some, at least, to make sure that things end up in the right places. But like I said, that category thing is a little bit of a pro and a con for me. Because on the one hand, yes, it does keep people from just labeling the book as whatever in the hopes that it gets read, but it also restricts those of us who really don't fit into just one specific category from really being able to accurately label the book. Tags are another thing that really bother me on Wattpad. So you can search by category or you can search by tag. And hypothetically, the tags are supposed to be related to the story and help you to understand what the story is going to be about. But a lot of the younger writers just kind of tag things with whatever they think vaguely fits or whatever seems most popular, because at the end of the day, they just want their writing to be read. They don't care whether or not it really is good quality or whether or not it is accurately labeled so the reader is getting what they expect. It's something that it's to be expected. It's not, a lot of the writers on there are very, very new. And again, there's nothing wrong with this. They will learn eventually, most of them. If they're in it to really succeed, they're going to learn eventually what to do and what not to do. But it is something that definitely is a struggle with the platform because we get so many new writers that don't know what they're doing. Along those same lines, I think with the critique groups, one of the things that I have noticed that you have to be careful about with Wattpad, that's a definite con, is the fact that there are a lot of critique groups where the people critiquing don't know what they're doing, because we have so many people on the platform and anyone can join these. If the people moderating and running it are not careful about who they allow in, then it can become a mess. I got to see this firsthand. Fortunately, I was not a part of the critique group anymore by the time this happened, but without naming any names, there was a critique group I had been involved in where they let someone in who wasn't really interested in being constructive or helpful. He was only really there for people to tell him his writing was amazing and to rip apart everyone else's work. Sadly, there are just people out there that are like that, and if they end up in the critique group, it can ruin it for everyone, and it did really ruin it for a lot of people. So that's something to just be careful of. Kind of take a look and see, what does the group do? What critiques have they already done? Who's involved? And just be smart about what you're getting involved in, because you want a group that's going to help you grow. And there are definitely groups on there that will. I was involved in some. It's how I got involved in my current critique group off of the platform. But you can also end up getting involved in a lot of them that are not beneficial at all, and that lead to feedback that is not going to help the book. So yeah, that can be a problem. I think those are probably the main things I would consider the cons for Wattpad. So I hope that this has been helpful to you guys. If you have any other questions about using the platform or specific things on the platform, feel free to reach out to me. I am more than happy to answer questions. I may not get back to you right away because I have a very busy schedule, but I am open to answering questions and talking to you guys about things relating to the platform, so just don't hesitate to reach out.